My name's Nate. I run Jesus People SF, and today I want to talk about Romans 8:28 and how it relates to the Shema Israel. And when Jesus is asked the question, what is the greatest commandment? He starts out in one of the Gospels by quoting the Shema because you shall love the Lord your God. It follows after the Shema. So the Shema is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. It uses the divine name in the Hebrew, so the Tetragrammaton, YHWH. But it's fine to say the word Lord in the place of it because that's actually how the New Testament authors quote it in the Greek. So they use the word Adonai, they use the word Kurios, Lord, for the place of the divine name. But the thing I want to get to is basically this. Romans 8:28 says, for we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Now, the interesting thing about that text is it's surrounded by not cushy promises. It's surrounded by promises that those who follow God will be persecuted. And so this verse is not a promise to ensure cushiness in every season. It's a promise of restoration and protection, and God's got it in a season of hardship mostly. Although, sure, use it for comfort too, I guess. But it's mainly, in my mind, a promise in the midst of hardship that God will work. And basically this relates to the Shema in the following way. The idea that God is one basically operates the following way. Everything in the cosmos, in some level, is has relation anyway, to a spiritual power holding the thing, or controlling it, or overseeing it. And not every power is submissive to the Lord. Not everything in the cosmos is submissive to God. So for instance, there's another text in the New Testament that says, we do not yet see everything under his feet, right? And there's a promise in the prophets, I believe it's Zechariah, and it says that that the Lord will be one and his name one. And so even in the New Testament, the enemies of God know this very deeply. In fact, it is their greatest fear in all the world and all of heaven and earth. Their greatest fear is that God will not just be one in theory or one in part, where he just has partial unity of all power and authority, but that there will be visible, tangible, like in every possible way, you will see, hear, feel the fact that God is unified and God is one. And so it says in, I believe, the book of James, the demons believe that God is one and they tremble. Why would that be the case? Because demons have some level of power and authority. But someday, as though God himself just put on the demonic as a glove, he will simply overtake their power. He will overtake their authority. And this ties back to Romans 8:28. Why? Because Romans 8:28 says, for we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So you see, whether it is the devil, as we saw in the book of Job, God working through the devil in some way, or the devil's working in the Gospels. Do you remember when the devils entered the pigs out of the man who had legion? Do you remember that scene? And the whole scene was a purpose of God, because it was kind of like displaying the power of God and all of that. But there's going to be an even greater iteration of God overtaking the power and authority of the demonic, so that the idea of Romans 8:28 is going to be far less theoretical and far less dependent on you trusting and clinging to it by faith. No. You will see it. In fact, the evil of the earth will see it with their eyes. Everyone on the earth will see the fact that all things work together for the kingdom of God and those who are in with God, and they will see it's not going to work so well for those who are out, despite the fact that, I'll just name a few things that are clearly not a part of God and his kingdom. First, there's hookup culture, which has completely destroyed the ability, even for secular people, to date and marry. I mean, you can look on TikTok, you can look on Instagram, you can look on YouTube. There's story after story after story of young men and young women who are just burned by the dating scene because of the looseness that is just so prevalent. You just can't get people to commit. Men don't trust women. Women are really picky. Just there's so much that's just off, you know? And this is a display of the fact that God in his authority has not yet taken that under his feet. However, there is coming a time when all things in heaven and on earth will be under his feet. There will be no hookup culture. There will be no demonic authority that can live in peace. It will always be being eaten up by the power and authority of God, as they have feared from the beginning. They think on God's unity. They think on God's oneness. They think on the coming unification of creation with God's will, if not God himself. And they know that their time is short. They tremble. They literally tremble at the thought. Now, they might have a little bit of peace in the sense of they feel like they've taken a lot of the cosmos for themselves. And so they think it's very far from their experience. But they know that God has fulfilled many things in their sight before, and they know he's able to do things in the present. It's just that God's kind of distant right now, at least by my perception, from a lot of activity upon the earth directly. Nevertheless, didn't God tell us all these things beforehand? Matthew 24, as in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. So keep your head up. Know that your redemption is drawing near. If you're following the Lord, just keep following the Lord. Don't look to the right or the left. Try not to let these things get to you. Obviously, if they do, just take it and then get up when you've got it. So anyway, that's a word for today. I was thinking about that as I was coming out of the gym. You know, the gym itself is a little bit of a spiritual battle. Not speaking of sexuality specifically, just thinking on the power and authority behind each human, the power and authority that holds a human, the God or entity that holds each human, meaning like angel, not uncreated God, like the true God. They're clashing all the time, you know? And so it's important that we just remember that the true God, he's not a God of the hills. He's not a God of the nation state of Israel only. He's not a God of Christians only. He's a God of all things, and he's going to accomplish what he set out to do. Thanks for your time. Bye.